So before we get into Forge proper, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. So our industries have been through a number of disruptions in the past. You could say the first disruption was when people started to use desktop PCs to do their CAD documentation instead of relying on drafting boards. And in fact that led to the birth of Autodesk and our AutoCAD product back in the 1980s. Then in the early 2000s we had our optimization disruption. And that was when products like Autodesk Revit and Autodesk Inventor allowed you to create parametric designs, and where the CAD applications were really customized for the kinds of products that you were actually designing. Well, now we have a third disruption, and that third disruption is the connection disruption. And we see this across all industries, where customers now expect to have access to all of the data all of the time, and in whatever device and in whatever format they want it. People just expect that kind of instant gratification now. And that's really the disruption which is driving the Autodesk Forge platform. So let's now move on to Forge. So what is Forge? Forge is a developer platform. So the simple answer is it's a set of web service APIs and components that Autodesk use and are making available to our customers to drive new design experiences. A slightly more in-depth answer is, if you ask someone in our Autodesk engineering team, they'll tell you that Forge is the common technology stack that we're using to build our own web applications and mobile applications. And an important part of that is a common data environment, so that now when you're going through the design to make, to use life cycle of the equipment that you're building, the same data lives in the same place for the entire life cycle of that product. So it doesn't have to be moved around, it doesn't have to be transformed between different formats. And so you don't have these problems with version control and loss of information when you're translating between different formats. However, looking from the outside in, if you're someone who's using Autodesk products, Forge is really two things. First of all, it's the APIs that you can use to integrate Autodesk products into your workflow. So for example, if you're using Fusion 360 or Fusion Team to manage your projects, you can integrate that into your workflow using the Forge APIs. And finally, Autodesk Forge is a set of components that you can use to create standalone experiences for your staff, for your stakeholders, for your customers around your designs, to give them access to the design data in ways that they've never had access before. And the use case I want to focus on today, because I only have 15 minutes to talk, in fact 10 minutes now, is one particular use case which is proving very popular with our customers. And it's this concept, it's this connection concept again, of connecting your design data to all of the other data about your design. So the historical scenario might have been something like this. I'm an engineer, I'm creating a design, I'm using some kind of CAD application, maybe it's Inventor, maybe it's SolidWorks, whatever. And I'm putting huge amounts of valuable data into the design. I click save, and all of that valuable data gets put into a proprietary file format, which I store on my desktop computer. And then someone else comes along and wants to see that data, and if they don't have a copy of that CAD application, they can't. Or they can't see if you like, the original data. They can see derivatives from it, so I could plot as a PDF, but that doesn't give me all the information. I could maybe export as STL for some uses, but I lose a lot of the information. So I've never truly been able to integrate my design data with the data from all of these other systems at the top of the screen there. Maybe it's my ERP system or my inventory system or my maintenance systems once a machine goes live. And Forge is really bridging that gap, because one of the functions that Forge performs, and it's one of the more popular use cases at the moment, is to take that design data from over 60 different file formats, Autodesk file formats, other vendors' file formats, and make it available so you can integrate it with the other data. And this isn't just geometry data, this is all about valuable object data that the original engineer put into the design. So it's part numbers, it's tolerances, it's materials, it's volumetric information, whatever the designer put into that model. It's also the relationships between the objects in that model, so the fact that the parts make up sub-assemblies and the sub-assemblies combine together into assemblies. All of that design intelligence is made available by Forge to other use cases. So it's probably best to show you this. So I'm going to flip over to a live demo now. And hopefully this will attract more of a crowd, because watching someone doing a live demo, a web demo on a conference it's a little bit like watching a downhill skier. You really hope the guy's going to crash and burn. That's what adds the excitement. So this is one of the more commonly used Forge components. So this is a 3D viewer. If you use something like Fusion Team or Fusion 360, you've seen this before. We use it in our own products. You can use it on your own website. So you have the kind of classic, just 2D as well, but 3D looks cooler. You can rotate, you can zoom, you can pan, as you'd expect with a viewer. But this, as I said, isn't just a pretty picture. This has got real design intelligence behind it. So I can open up the model browser, and I can drill down into components in that model. So I can actually say, show me the exhaust manifold, and it'll immediately home in on that exhaust manifold, show me where it is in the model. I can click on part of that manifold, look at its properties. I have all of this object data that was added to the original, in this case, Inventor file. And so now that's accessible to my web application. I get a few other things for free when I use a Forge viewer as well. So, if I want to take some measurements, we have a measure tool here. So, this comes for free. I can just choose 2 points, get some measurements. Maybe you want to do a live section, no problem. Nice live section here. Rotate that around if we want. Maybe I want to explode the model and get a better idea about its internal structure. So, as I explode the model, it has that design intelligence. So it first of all separates the models into sub-assemblies, and then the sub-assemblies get separated into parts. So a really valuable way. Imagine, for example, someone who is got some maintenance instructions, and they're trying to work out from 2D plans how to actually take apart this machine and put it back together. Well, compare that to having a potentially animated maintenance instruction in a Forge viewer. So that's all stuff you get for free. But this application here, this is a sample application, is really demonstrating how you can combine that design data with data from other systems. So what we have over here on the right is a materials database, and it's just a material and its price. And this happens to be an online database. It's actually a MongoDB instance, which happens to contain material pricing information. And this happens to be an Inventor model of an engine. But don't get hung up on what this actual data is. Just think of a general concept. So, this could have been live IoT data. This could be documentation about the model. This could be maintenance information. It could be inventory levels. Anything that you want it to be. As long as you have that access to that data available, you can combine it with the model. And what we've done here, we've linked up this data to the model so that when I, say, for example, click on this ABS plastic item, it shows me in the model all of the components that contain ABS plastic. If I want to look at the cast iron components in the model, I can do that. If I want to look at the stainless steel. And so now you're starting to see the power of Forge, where you can create visual reports, and so actually use it to display information about this other data and overlay it on the model. We can take that a step further as well. So we can combine data from the model with this data to create some additional reports. So what we have here is a cost breakdown for the model. So I'm querying the model for every component. I know what material it's made out of. I know the volume of that component. And so I'm combining the price here in this table with the volume information from a model. So obviously, as I change the price dynamically, you see down here, the cost breakdown changes. I can go further again, because it's one thing to display the data in a separate table. Wouldn't it be greater to actually overlay that data on the actual model? And I can do that too. So a bit of custom coding and a little bit of JavaScript code. I can color code everything in the model based on the material it's made from. Just explode that to make it a bit clearer. And so again, you have this concept of visual reports. And in this case, I've colored it by materials. I could have performed a stress analysis, and instead of solid color, actually had a heat map over the product to display the results of my FEA analysis or something. We actually have Autodesk partners who do that. Or it could be, maybe the item turns red if my inventory level's low, or if a sensor is telling me it's running hot. We can do all of that with Forge to give a really simple web or mobile or desktop-based experience that anyone can use. This is zero client, there's no plugins required. They literally just point their browser at your website and they get access to the design data. And whatever aspect of the design data you want them to have. If you don't want them to see this inside information, you don't have to expose it. Okay, so going back to the PowerPoint. Here's another example. We have a customer in Austria called Andritz. They make big machines. But they had a really big problem that their customers could buy the machines off them, but when it came to buying spare parts, it was actually really hard for the customers to buy their spare parts from Andritz. And so instead, their customers were going and buying knockoff parts from copycat manufacturers, and it was actually easier to buy the copycat parts than the original parts. It was also cheaper. I mean, they're not as reliable, but it was cheaper. So it was kind of a double whammy for Andritz, but cheaper parts, easier to buy. Why would anyone buy the genuine parts? So they used Forge to create a spare parts portal for their customers. And now what happens when a customer logs into their Andritz portal, they see a list of the exact configuration of the machines they bought from Andritz, and they can drill down into one of those machines, and they can order parts in different ways, just a simple web interface for parts ordering. So Andritz gives them the option to just click and buy some common spare parts combinations that they might want to use, but they can also order parts by clicking on the model. So they can look at a 2D layout, they can look at the electrical schematic, or they can look at the 3D. And so the customer might click on the electrical schematic if I'm an electrical engineer, and then just click on one of the components here and add it to my cart and immediately go off and get a quote for that. Or if I want a mechanical part, I can again use the Forge viewer, so I can explode and rotate and section, make sure I got exactly the right part, click on it, add it to my shopping cart, ask Andritz to quote on me. And as a result of this, all of Andritz customers or a large percentage of Andritz's customers who were buying copycat parts are now coming back to Andritz to buy those genuine parts for their machines. Because now it's simple. It's literally a simple click, drag and drop, click on a button web buying experience that they never had before. So another example, I have another live example here just to give you a simple idea of IoT data on a machine. So this is actually a proof of concept we created for a manufacturer of plant machinery, and they were developing a digital twin application, and we wanted to show them how they might display IoT data on their machines. So the idea here is actually this machine is smothered in sensors. Basically every part of this machine has got sensors on it, but we're only showing information from the sensors which are telling me there's a problem. So you see here we have this hotspot that's flashing and one over here, and we have this incident list. And the incident list corresponds to the hotspot. So when I click on an incident, it immediately takes me in the model, shows me where in the model there's a problem, and starts showing me, in this case, the live streaming IoT data. Of course, in other cases, that may be some kind of summary data. But we can literally show the live data that's coming off our sensors, or alternatively, I can just click on a hotspot and see the data coming through. So again, a really powerful way of just giving people this visual context, creating a visual report for somebody based on the original design of the model. So I have one more example to show you. And this is slightly tangential for this particular conference. This is a smart building example. But we're finding at Autodesk that there's this huge convergence between architecture and design and manufacturing. Buildings these days are basically just really big machines that people walk around in. So an Autodesk partner, EU Tech, who are based in Singapore, have created their Aviva product, which is a smart building management platform, and they base their entire platform on Forge. And so this allows them, a platform allows you to very simply connect up sensors in the buildings, machines within the buildings, monitor and control them from the Aviva product. And I have a video just to show how that works. So this is a high quality BIM model of an airport terminal. And so the first thing you can do is you can just walk around in the terminal inside the viewer. And when you come to a particular place where we actually have some controllable machinery, it actually shows tags in the model for that machinery that I can operate. But the other way of accessing that data is, if there's an incident, say, in the building, you immediately get a tag appears on the building model. I can click into there and see what's happening. I can go and select nearby machinery and actually start to use that to investigate what's happening at that point in the building without ever having to actually put on my shoes and walk out my office. So just carry that video playing. And in this case, we can control the CCD camera. Oh, it's a little bit dark. Let's turn up the lighting a bit so we can get a better view from the camera. Turns out when we look on the camera, it's a spillage perhaps. We want to turn the fans off so the smell doesn't spread. Oh, someone's broken some glass as well. Let's take a photo of that from the camera. So the first responder knows exactly what they're seeing when they come to the building. So literally the entire airport terminal here is wired up with sensors and controllable machinery. They're starting to add in machine learning algorithms as well, so at certain times of day they're learning they can save money by, instead of turning on the air conditioning units, it's still cool enough outside that they can open the windows instead and just blow in some fresh air instead. So some really amazing things being done with Forge. So hopefully that's just given you a quick overview of what Forge is about, one of the use cases, one of the most common use cases people are using Forge for. If that's at all interesting to you, then grab me after this presentation, or alternatively, if you haven't got time to stick around, just go to forge.autodesk.com. Everything you need to actually learn about this platform, some of those live samples I showed you, you can play with yourselves. If you've got web developers in your team, we have code on GitHub that you can go to, documentation, so they can really quickly get up and running with a free trial of Forge and actually experiment themselves with creating web experiences around their design data. So, thank you very much for listening.